The Lennon Series with Jude Southerland Kessler featuring Should Have Been There and Shivering Inside.
Right. Well, here we are with Thomas Amezcua, and I've gotten a lot of requests lately from people who are doing research papers or research projects on the Beatles to do an interview, and most of them have asked me to write the answers down, which would really involve a lot of time and writing and so forth. But Thomas was kind enough to say that he could call and we do it over the phone. So I have gotten his gracious permission to record this for YouTube. And so, Thomas, tell me, where are you from, first of all? He says, in case you guys aren't picking this up, that he's from the Bay Area and that actually it's raining in California. I thought it never rained. I guess it just never rains in Southern California. Well, I really appreciate you calling for the interview, and hope I can answer your questions. I did a little bit of research last night, so fire away whenever you're ready. He wants to know, why were the Beatles more successful than any other group that came out of England? John Lennon was asked that question one time, and he said, if I knew the answer to that, then I'd be a manager and have lots of other groups and make millions of dollars. So, obviously, he did make millions of dollars, but, you know, it's an intangible element. It's something you're born with. In the United States, we have a phenomenon known as Concord, Massachusetts. And in that city, there was Emerson, Thoreau, all of your great writers of that time, Louisa May Alcott, the people who were huge in literature in that day, all congregated in that one town of Concord, Massachusetts. In Liverpool, there was a theory for years that the reason that there were so many great groups that came out of Liverpool was that the ships that came in from America had sailors who brought music from America, and they brought records, and all the people there got to hear it, and that's why they became so attuned to the groups, the rock groups of the late 1950s, and they became such great musicians. Recently, people have discounted that, and it really just is that thing that we're talking about with Concord, Massachusetts. It's magic. The Beatles were born with an inherent gift. Julia, John's mother, used to say that John had music in his bones, that, she was a musician. She played her banjo all over Liverpool. John's father, Fred, was a musician on the transport ships that took the soldiers to and from the European front. John was born with a gift that comes once in an eon. Paul was born with a gift that comes once in 10 millenniums. And when they got together, it was magic. Then they pick up a young kid like George Harrison, who's talented beyond his wildest imagination and ours, and Ringo Starr, who's considered the coolest guy in Liverpool. It just was magic. There were lots of other great groups, but they didn't have what John would have called the je ne sais quoi, that element that just makes you great. And as John said, if we knew what it was, we could bottle it. I know that's not much of an answer, but it's just the truth. Think of many groups have one sound, and that's what they market. And every time you hear them, you say, that's that group, because you know that that's their signature sound. You can almost identify them. I'm a big Daughtry fan from the American Idol series. And then okay, well, you know Daughtry when you hear him. That's his sound. You can almost say another Daughtry #1. But with the Beatles, every song was vastly different. When they did Love Me Do, George Martin at EMI held his breath because he was afraid that was their one-trick pony, that was all they were going to be able to do. When they came back with Please Please Me, he was like, oh, good. And then She Loves You, oh, great. They could do many, many different things. So their individual talents, Paul's gift with music, John's gift with lyrics, George's beautiful lead solos, Ringo's Northern British drumming, the fact that in Northern England, You drum like you do in the Highlands of Scotland. You drum on the rim. You drum using all 10 fingers to hold the drumstick. You pound the drums. And that relentless bass that echoed Paul's bass. I mean, you could just go on and on about what made them great. But, you know, when you really get down to it, it's just a God-given gift. That's what they had. How did the Beatles change the world, and how is their effect still being felt today? I rarely ever go to a sporting event, a movie, any sort of public outing in which the Beatles are not either mentioned, alluded to, or their music isn't played. It happens everywhere. It's kind of gotten to be a game. I'll go to a baseball game and I'll go, oh, there it is. They're the Beatles. Or you'll go to a movie and someone will say one line like, give peace a chance, or let it be, or whatever. And you go, ah, the Beatles. They are all around us. On iTunes, as you know, right now, their downloads are #1. About 3 years ago, Across the Universe took the world by storm. It was a huge hit movie. They keep coming out with new things, new bits of music that they found, that they can take John's words, or they can take his piano solos or whatever, and they can turn into another hit song. We use their phrases constantly. They've become a part of our lingo. They're a part of advertising, whether it's Nike or Adidas or computers or whatever. People are constantly using Beatles songs and phrases and lines to advertise their products, something John would have abhorred. He never wanted that done. He wanted the music to be pure and the music to be used for enjoyment, not for commercial purposes. But be that as it may, the Beatles are everywhere. How did they change the world? Well, I sat down last night. I kind of knew you were going to ask that because we talked about it via email, and I made a list. Let's just talk about fashion. Here's my little list of all the ways that they changed fashion. Stu Sutcliffe, do you know Stu? Are you familiar with him, Thomas? Stu? Yes, Stu Sutcliffe. Do you know him? Okay, he was John's best friend, more than just his best friend. He was his soulmate. And I don't know how much you know about John's childhood, but John lost both his mother and father. For very complicated reasons. His mother gave him to his sister to rear when John was about 5 years old. And John's father, who tried to take John away to live with him and was refused that possibility, never came back again because he felt like John was living with his mom, and that was the way it should be. So John was pretty much alone. He lived with his aunt and uncle. His aunt did her duty by John. She raised him. She took him to Sunday school. She made him do his homework. But every day he would say to her, Auntie Mimi, why are you here when I come home from school every day? Hoping she would say, because I love you. And she would say, it's my duty to be here. And his uncle, who was the only one that was ever kind to John, who would hide little barley sweets under his pillow at night, and who would sneak him away to the movies because his aunt would not allow him to go to the movies and wouldn't allow him to play with toys. He had to do something purposeful. His uncle, who was kind to him, died when John was 15. And so John was pretty much on his own. He felt like he was an orphan in life. At that point, his mother came back into his life and became his best friend again, and they hung out together, and she taught him to play guitar, and she inspired him to form a band, and she was just a crazy, wild, bohemian, fun, wonderful woman, and John fell head over heels for her. But about 2.5 years later, she was hit by a drunk driver and killed right in front of his house. So when Stu Sutcliffe comes into John's life, when John attends Liverpool College of Art, you're talking about a man who has no one who understands him, no one who loves him, no one who cares about him, really. And Stu and John become best buddies. So Stu's an art student. And as an art student, he's very aware of the cutting edge and fashion and trends. So Stu, at one point in the winter of 1962, he's gone away to Hamburg. He's fallen in love. He's living in Hamburg. He comes back to Liverpool, and he's wearing this tight, short, pocketless suit. And everybody's making fun of Stu and laughing at him, asking him if he's wearing his sister's clothes. Well, Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager, sees that suit and he says, I love that, and that's what the Beatles are going to wear.
Jude Southerland Kessler interview, end of part 1.